Everyone, welcome to Manufacturing Hub. It is Wednesday afternoon. We're so happy you guys could join us. We've got a special Automate preview show going on today. We've got Brian who will come say hi and tell us his thoughts and expectations in just a moment. We've got James who will be joining us a little bit later to go share a different view of thoughts, expectations, and other things. If you guys are new here, welcome. If you've been to Manufacturing Hub before, welcome back. Typically, we have a conversation with one guest and we dig super deep into a topic. This week, we're doing a bit of what I like to think of as the most important automation show in the US, or at least in North America, Automate, which will be next week, May 12th through 15th. May 12th through 15th in Detroit. It's my understanding that it'll be the last year in Detroit, and so it will be slightly sad to see Detroit go off of the every other year, off of the every other year show. Having said that, Vlad and I are super happy to be back. We had a fantastic time 2 years ago when we were in Detroit. I'm not sure we stopped talking and or stopped filming the entire time. I honestly just remember lugging around cameras, and at some point the cameras were just on the tripods, and then we were just like running from one booth to the next. I imagine I talked to other people as well, but it's a little bit too much, at least on the Dave side of things. So this year we are going to have a slightly narrower focus on what we're going to go do and on what we are going to and on the videos we're going to go shoot. So this Wednesday, or I guess next Wednesday, the 14th, a week from today, your normal Manufacturing Hub day, Vlad and I are going to be in the Siemens booth, which is, I believe, booth 3232, the entire day. We've got 6 or 7 conversations and what we hope will be a Manufacturing Hub live coming live to you guys from the show floor. If you watched 2 years ago, you know that sometimes going live from the show floor is easier said than done. So we're very hopeful that we will be able to go ahead and provide some of that live footage and feedback and kind of the energy of the show on Wednesday. Very excited about that. One other note, on Tuesday, which is the 13th at 11 o'clock, I am moderating a conversation with Jeff Bernstein, who is the president of A3, and Chris Stevens, one of the vice presidents at Siemens, talking about the MIT Siemens report, and we'll go ahead and post the link. It will be apparently on LinkedIn Live, which is cool. It's entitled "The Secret to Next Level Automation is Out There." So we're going to go talk about the report and some of the trends in the analytics. My understanding, it's the first of a 3-part conversation that is happening. I'm super excited to be involved with it, and so we'll make sure to have those links posted so that you guys can follow along. Beyond that, a couple of other important notes before I let Vlad say if he's got a couple of other things going on. Be sure to go ahead and look at the networking parties, right? So the networking parties are some of the best parts events. There is a Automate networking party on Monday at 5:15 as part of the show. You can go buy a $40-ish ticket for that. Vlad and I went first completely on a whim 2 or 3 years ago, and now it's how we finish or maybe start all of our Monday evenings. And there are a ton of other things going on. I will note that there's extra innings with Chris and Jake, the Manufacturing Millennial and Manufacturing Happy Hour on Tuesday, which I believe is open for anyone. If you go ahead and RSVP, it is always a lot of fun. I never have a voice or can hear things when we leave those, which is not good because, again, Wednesday morning, we will be on the show floor going and having conversations with all of you folks. So I definitely go ahead and check that out and go find what those opportunities look like for you if you are going to be at Automate. Vlad, do you have any other specific Automate items you want to go bring up?
I would say, look, besides the obvious, right? So I think we will be definitely at multiple booths, right? So I think for me, the time outside of our pre-planned conversations, as you mentioned, at Siemens, will be spent looking at some of the other tech, of course, looking at vendors like Phoenix Contact, looking at inductive automation, Opto 22. I made a longer list, right? There's a lot of vendors I want to see: Cognex, Festo, SDA. So there's a long list, and I will do my best to get through all of them. Again, Dave and I will probably be split up at different activities. But if you do want to connect with us, if you want to have a conversation on any topics related to manufacturing, feel free to reach out to me and or Dave and or Brian, who's also going to be at the Phoenix contact booth. But we'll chat about that in just a moment. And so yeah, I guess if there's no other comments, like I said, I think it's going to be a really good show. Looking forward to it. I can't believe a year has already flew by, and it's only a couple of days left before Automate. But Brian, before we ask you some questions as to what you're going to be doing there, and what
Hmm.
some of your maybe thoughts and conversations are going to look like, could you give a brief introduction for some of those who might not know who you are?
Yeah, so I'm Brian Priebe, president of Mach Controls. We are a systems integrator based in Toledo, Ohio, and we are here to get manufacturers up to speed with their operations.
I like the concise and the brief intro, Brian. Really good. Let me ask you, I guess, for next week, what are your plans for Automate? What are you bringing to the show? And ultimately, what are you showcasing from the Mac side?
Yeah, so for the Automate show, we're going to be bringing our ProveIt demo that we showed off in February, but with some added Phoenix contact hardware and some more features added on top of it. So if you were there for the ProveIt conference and you were there talking with us and you saw the demo, it's gotten bigger and it's gotten better.
Mhm.
So yeah.
I was going to say follow-up question, Brian. So the last time Vlad and I saw you on the Prove It floor, we were three of the last like seven people who existed. Nothing had started to get broken down, and you were managed to break it down and go fit it all in your truck for the long drive home. It's
Yeah.
expanded. Will it still fit in one vehicle?
Well, the good thing is now is that the internet exists, and so some
Okay.
of the sources of the information can be from other sites now.
Okay.
So what we are bringing is two panels that we'll be mounting, and then two TVs to be showing those off.
Mhm.
So there will be space for us now to have another
Okay.
passenger in the car.
Oh, crazy,
Let,
crazy.
Yeah.
Brian, let me ask you, I guess, like to expand because I don't want to assume that everyone who has been to, or I guess who's going to Automate has been at Prove It, right? If I'm not mistaken, the numbers for Automate are something around 30,000 to 40,000 attendees. I could be wrong on this, but
Yeah.
we'll. So I think the numbers are quite different. So maybe there is some cross pollination of the audience, but maybe if you could elaborate a little bit more as to what one could expect to see in your demo.
Yeah, so with our demo, what we did differently than a lot of people are going to be demonstrating, especially at the Automate show, is that we've taken a lot of hardware together and we put them together to represent what a manufacturer would look like. So we've gotten three panels to have control systems on them from various different vendors. We've put on an industrial PC on each of those panels, and we showed how we would connect to those machines, how we would transform the data that's coming from them, how we would manage these instances of softwares, how you would manage the deployment either on the edge or whether you wanted to do this on premise, say as a on premise cloud instance. So that's what we essentially did, is that we wanted to represent what a manufacturer would look like at the Prove It demo. And we had three panels. We had an on-premise server, and we did everything right on site. We partnered with United Manufacturing Hub as well
Mhm.
on this on the demo too, and we showed off what their unified namespace can provide for manufacturers. And we
Okay.
did all of this on premise, and all of it was pretty much free and open source, except for one business license, and that was to get GitOps. But
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you, I guess, because I think, the three of us, and I would assume a lot of our technical audience understands in theory what you have built and are going to be very excited to go see, the hardware and the software solution. But for someone who's maybe a little bit higher decision maker, who's just, working maybe on the operation side or a plant management side, who's less interested about the technical details and more curious as to how this can help them solve certain problems. Could you maybe expand on what can they do with this type of data, or what does the data even look like? You know what I mean? Like what can they expect to see next week?
So with what this architecture can do is it provides you a unified namespace architecture. So it
Mhm.
gives you two brokers. It networks them together. Same with another database with it, and that is also configured with it too. So it also has various pipelines too that you deploy with it. So there's some that come standard with it, and then there are ones that you add on to it. So as you want to connect, say, your ERP system, or you have a LIMS system or something of the sort, and you want to get data and you want to connect that to your unified namespace, this infrastructure facilitates that. So it gives you not only the infrastructure, but the means in which to integrate all of your systems together with it. So it's kind of hard for me to explain all the little details at a high level. I have a really hard time with it. So I do a lot better with more specific examples with it. Because then at that point, I can, when I talk with somebody that has a really big problem, like they're trying to solve really big problems at their plants, and they definitely need data. They definitely need this sort of stuff to do it. But it's very difficult to kind of explain it without the application on hand to show,
Of course.
okay, how would that data get from this PLC to then be available for that system? And then what does that look like as your data is en route? Or if you now have saved it, what do you do with it then? Are you going to keep it in the database to keep querying on it? Or is it old data? Do you need to offload that? Should it be cleaned up and all this sort of stuff? So it's difficult to kind of tell at a high level what this architecture can do. If anything, you can consider this being your industrial data infrastructure. So it provides you all of the tools and systems you need to connect to your machines, to connect to your operations, to connect to your business, and provide that information for you.
Yeah, and look, to be honest with you, that's why I left it as an open-ended question, right? Because I think it's interesting also, and to some extent, I would say fascinating how our industry and let's say our hardware and software can be applied across different verticals that are vastly different, right? And I continue having conversations. My background, at least earlier in my career, has been in food and beverage, but talking to some guys in oil and gas, for example, they're experiencing very different, distributed sites, thousands of different sites with very few IO points. Whereas in food and beverage, it's, trying to capture 10,000 tags per line with multiple lines at a single site, right? So as you've mentioned, I think it's not necessarily that there is a right answer, but the first step, I would say, as you've mentioned, is the right architecture, right? And you can adopt it to different solutions and different problems to solve those challenges. So definitely appreciate it. Dave, what are your thoughts?
So we've got Dylan in the comments saying that the demo from ProveIt was already insane, that he can't believe it got bigger, which is also my thought as soon as he said it, Dylan, but I am happy that he didn't have to buy a larger vehicle. That was, in fact, a bit of my worry, is that we're just going to see Brian show up to Detroit in, I don't know, like one of those Enterprise 40-foot long box trucks in order to go fix the demo. So I agree.
That may happen.
Next year.
A minus, it could be a plus, you know what I mean? It's a booth on wheels at the same time, so it could be an opportunity.
So Brian, you're going to be at the Phoenix Contact booth. Are you going to be at the Phoenix Contact booth part of every day if people want to come find you at Automate?
I will be there all day, every day.
Perfect.
So
and I did
on it, then yeah, I'm the guy.
Perfect. So I looked it up. The Phoenix Contact booth is booth number 5232. For anyone who wants to go find and spend several hours conversing with Brian. I don't know how you're going to go have 2,000 several hour long conversations, Brian, but I am interested to hear if you've got some voice at the end of the show.
The ProveIt conference was a good practice for it.
It was, yes.
I am a little intimidated with the Automate show. I will say I will be bringing a ton of tea. The first day of the ProveIt one, I messed up by not having any tea.
Yeah.
That next one was terrible.
Yes, I 100% agree. You will see me drinking some sort of hot liquid through most of the conferences. Now, we were talking before, this is not your first Automate. We would love to get kind of your thoughts and feelings on the conference as well. Are there things outside of seeing you that people should go look at? We would love to go get your perspective on Automate in general, and maybe a couple of particular things that you enjoy doing.
Yeah, so the Automate show in general has always been a very enjoyable show. It's always been a great one to to just attend to see everything going on. I mean, Fanuc always has an amazing demonstration with their robots, whether they're
Mhm.
picking up a Corvette or something, throwing it upside down,
Yeah.
or it's one of the like AGVs are like coming out doing a
Mhm.
whole bunch of new stuff. So the demonstrations of a lot of the hardware has been always phenomenal at the Automate show. Um,
Yes.
and I would say probably some of my favorite ones are like definitely you got the robotic ones, but I think the AGV ones were really cool in the previous years because it was a bit of a newer industry in general. So it was
Mhm.
really cool seeing what the various possibilities were out there, what the different implementations were, and the different use cases to why to have it. Um, as for other booths, I want to see part of my issue is that I do so much research on a lot of the automation brands that are out there. It's kind
Mhm.
of hard
Mhm.
to sneak anything new against me, you know. It's kind of hard to
Yeah.
surprise me or like have me want to see. It's like, you know, what else you got new here? It's like, okay, seen that, I know that, I already looked at that in the catalog. I
Mhm.
already know how much
Mhm.
that one costs.
Mhm.
But I think some of the more interesting ones are the ones that are doing stuff with software on the
Mhm.
software side. So whether it is they're a hardware provider and
Mhm.
they are integrating some newer technology, whether
Mhm.
it be on the software end, well, I mean, obviously on the software end, but like more on the sensor side of stuff. So like Balif doing more stuff
Mhm.
with IO Link, Banner doing more stuff with IO Link.
Mhm.
Uh,
Hmm.
what are the various new technology, new products that they're coming out with, and how
Mhm.
are they planning on tying that in? And how does
Mhm.
this look like for like the next machines that are coming out of machine builders to then get down to the plant floor and stuff? So now for specifics, I mean, you can't PLC Next booth, Phoenix Context booth in general, you're going to want to be at and see a lot of it. It's a 60
Mhm.
by 40-foot booth,
Okay.
and it's got chock full of automation and tons of different things to be going through.
Mhm.
The next thing I want to see is probably Opta 22. I want
Mhm.
to talk with them a lot more. They've gotten a new edition of having Docker containers on their
Yep.
PLCs, and
Yep.
that is a really that's a really big thing, especially in the industry right now. And
Mhm.
there's not many that are doing Docker containers on PLCs.
Mhm.
PLC Next is one of the few. Opta 22 is now one of them. I
Mhm.
think Wago is another brand that is doing it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very seldom do you see manufacturers are starting to get what IT has been doing for the past couple of years and
Yep.
how we can get more of IT solutions right onto the PLC. And what does that look like? How do you apply it? How do you manage it and all those sort of things?
Yeah, I
I
think it's going to be interesting, right? Go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I agree with Brian. For me, Automate post-pandemic was a big shift than Automate pre-pandemic, right? So Automate pre-pandemic, every other year in Chicago, was to me always described as the big robot show, right?
Mm,
That is how it was described over and over again. And so I've been very, very impressed each of the last 3+ years. The direction that we've seen more and more, especially software vendors, like to a large extent, the automation vendors, the Siemens, the Phoenix Contacts, Beckhoff had a huge booth up front last year, and so a lot of the, we'll just call them newer generation um, hardware vendors, at least newer generation to the North American market, hardware guys going and spending time and money and putting their applications in there, and then going and seeing the inductives and that entire solution partners, who they're apparently going to have a very large booth also this year, and other software vendors going and spending money and continuing to grow larger and larger. We've seen the Copia group for each of the last 2 or 3 years, and I think they've slowly gotten larger. The software
mhm,
defined
mhm.
automation group was there last year. I know they're going to be back this year. I wouldn't be surprised if they got larger. So going and seeing more and more of those groups makes me personally very happy. And I'm happy that we continue to see that trend of more and more new age software.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you a dangerous question, and maybe the answer is to come see you next week for the answer. But ultimately, I'm curious to hear what you're running within those Docker containers, right? Because I believe like UMH deploys via Docker. Is that something we'll be able to see examples of next week with you?
Absolutely. So honestly, anything with the demo, we'll show off. And if you have any
Okay.
question, we have a lot of it access to be able to go with it. I mean, hell, I built the damn thing. So if you got
Okay.
any questions, definitely ask. As for there really isn't much of a restriction. So with always what we're trying to do right now is that we're trying to help manufacturers. We see that there's a really big issue with medium, small ones actually doing anything meaningful with their machinery. If they
Yep.
are considering getting data out of their machines, anytime it becomes a like a question of, hey, do we want to pick this machine to get data out of? You're looking at something that's always like a 4 to 5 figure expense for a
Mhm.
manufacturer to invest in. And it's already into an asset that they've already paid off, that it's always been running, but they aren't able to get any sort of insights on. It's because of some other, there's a field bus protocol that's very old, weird, that there isn't any relatively available software that can connect to it. Or in general, the machine builder has locked it all up to where you must buy from them and only go through them to get your information out of the machine. And we really see that as a really bad thing for the industry as a
Mhm.
whole, because when you buy the machine, you're going to be utilizing that as much as possible. But how much do you know that you're utilizing it? Like, what percentage are you utilizing it day in and day out? If you're not
Most of them
tracking
don't.
any of
Right.
it, you don't know. And
Mhm.
this is a really big problem, because like if you're looking at wanting to grow as a manufacturer, you got to be smart with your money, because the capital expenses for this equipment is not small. They're they can get up to people's salaries and paychecks in general for a simple machine, but we don't do anything on providing that data to be available for them. And
Mhm.
it's not part of the quoting process or anything, or if anything, it's a second thought. And that's a really big problem for manufacturers, because if you're not tracking what you're doing, you simply do not know how well you are doing. If you don't have
Yeah.
those numbers to back it up, you can't say how well you're doing. So what I think is that the vast majority of all the machines that are out there in production right now, probably maybe 5 or 10% of them, we're actually getting data from. I
Mhm.
think the vast majority of the rest, we are not. So,
Yep. One hundred
so at
percent.
Mach Controls, really what we want to do is we want to get this industry up to speed with just understanding where they are at. What is the state of their machines, and everything about that. And what that means is that we got to be able to connect with all the various machines and everything that's out there, and make this and provide an infrastructure to make it easy for them to connect to their machines, collect data about it, visualize it, and then make an executive choice on what to do with it. Because now,
Mhm.
because the issue with a lot of manufacturers is that because you have no insight, no visibility, it's a out of sight, out of mind. It's not a problem. Well, because
Yeah.
you're not able to see what's actually going on, you can't see what the actual problems are in your plant. And as far as it is to you, it's just a mystery. It's a blank thing, and it's caused by some other unknown thing. So we really want to just help manufacturers be able to connect to their machines and help out with that. So that's why we partner with United Manufacturing Hub and their platform. They have
Mhm.
the focus that the solution is free and open source, that it's licensed under the Apache 2.0 license. So you could fork it, you can modify, you can do whatever you want with it, and you can own it.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, it's your manufacturing hub, and you can decide what you want to do with it. But we want to give it to you for free and open source, give you the best solution possible, but the best infrastructure, and give you the ability to connect to your machines and get that as a standard.
Yeah, and I think it's a very interesting value proposition, to be honest with you, right? And I do need to do a little bit more research on UMH. UMH, you've definitely shown a very complete demo last time we spoke at ProveIt. I think I would say for me, it's a huge opportunity for manufacturers. But I will also caution, I would say, I think you need to be competent on the OT side in order to work with some of these architectures, right? That's why I think you have a really good background to, bring those tools into an end user. But I wouldn't say necessarily the same about all the groups, right? I think there's something to be said about Docker being a tool that kind of opens up a lot of doors, but
Oh yeah.
also opens up the potential to, what I mean? You could run anything now on your PLC or your IPC. So it's, how would I say it? Potential for disasters. But no, Brian, I think that's really cool. I'm looking forward to the demo. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. And if anyone's going to be at Automate, highly recommend that you pass by. I had another question, but look, we're going to talk to you next week. We'll connect in person. And we'll continue this conversation as we mentioned a little bit off stream in another episode. So if you're interested in more from Brian and you're not going to be able to make it to Automate, we will definitely bring you back on.
Perfect. Appreciate it. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Absolutely.
So much,
Brian,
Brian.
thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Forward.
Having said that, if everything works out and I can go ahead and move these around, I don't think that there was a better setup on connectivity that anyone could have possibly given James. James Bernan for IR Solutions. I was having
well
slightly.
done, gentlemen. Well done.
Yes,
That was,
yes.
the
It
plan
was
you guys
completely
had
planned.
worked. Yeah.
Yes. It was completely it was completely planned. So good job, Brian. No, thank you guys very much for that. But no, so James, if people don't know you, can you let them know a little bit about who you are and who 4IR is, and probably who 4IR is in relation to the inductive automation ignition ecosystem, which is where people can find you next week.
For sure. So I'm James Bernan. I'm the CEO of 4IR Solutions. We are inductive automation's solutions partner with a focus on managed infrastructure. So some of the conversations I was just listening to are very much in our wheelhouse, and certainly, our place in this world is to try to help bridge that IT/OT divide, make it easy for manufacturers to adopt technologies that are, in some cases, very cutting edge, bleeding edge, and for there to be a path for not just how to get it working, which is one of the best things about Docker is it's super easy to get something working, but to keep it working and make it secure and have it be something that's maintainable over the lifetime of it. That second part is maybe a little less exciting, but certainly I think is the part that we think is very, very valuable to different folks. So yeah, our business model is we are a platform as a service. So we deliver Ignition and everything else that comes along with Ignition as a service to customers. So that includes things like databases, identity providers, security, networking. We have a variety of different variations. We've got some additional software. So MQTT brokers now. And we're in talks with a couple of different folks about adding some additional things into the catalog so that we can have more different applications that are kind of adjacent to the Ignition ecosystem. It's somewhat similar to a United Manufacturing Hub in that we use some of the same technology base. I really love those guys. We've had nothing but good things to say about them over the time, and we in our case. We use a lot of the same open source technologies, but obviously there's a commercial package at the center of ours, and that part is really in response to trying to help the Ignition community and the Ignition user base be able to deploy and take advantage of Ignition and the related tooling around it mostly for digitalization activities. If you look at our install base, we're basically the data repository and the centerpiece for most AI initiatives is where it's being used. So it's a lot of big data and AI companies are using the models and data and information that's being hosted to do things like predictive maintenance and do things like predictive quality and performance management and optimization. that's still a very growing world, and there's a lot of investment, a lot of time in that world. But that's a lot, in a lot of cases, that's what the cloud portion of what we do gets used for.
Mhm. James, if I can ask you maybe to expand a little bit, right? So for those who are maybe not as familiar with 4IR as myself and Dave, right? What does this look like from a practical standpoint, right? As an example, if I'm running a medium-sized food and beverage manufacturing plant with currently maybe a SCADA system, whether that's just HMIs on Factory Talk VME or RSU32, and I'm looking to deploy Ignition, am I deploying via servers? Am I just routing this to cloud via AWS, Azure, whatever that is? Like, what does it look like maybe in practice for an end user?
So now you're setting me up again, because I thank you for that. I'm not sure if Dave put you up to that, but I appreciate it. So if you look at where 4IR started, is we really started focusing on cloud down. So the first versions of Factory Stack were really focused on how can we supply time series databases and regular databases and identities and backups and management and certificates and all the stuff you need to be able to have high security, high capability deployments inside of a public cloud or semi-public cloud, depending on your deployment type. What we've recognized in the couple of years we've been in business, coming up on 4 now, is that what happens on-prem matters, and in some cases it's harder for a lot of the folks to handle that on-prem portion of what they do. So we actually have 2 products, one that's been in the market but not really pushed very hard, and one that we're going to be doing our soft launch of next week, called Factory Stack Edge and Factory Stack Local, with the purpose of those being to provide a fully managed, basically ISO type thing, where you either install it in a VMware server, a VM server of some sort, or you have it on bare metal, and it provides for you the capabilities to have an Ignition system on-prem, not just a data pump, but a full-blown SCADA system or a batch controller or whatever it is you need to do, delivered as a service. So you get monitoring, you get management, you get updates and upgrades to the software. You get somebody taking care of all your backups and putting them into immutable storage, and it runs on-prem, and it runs in whatever hardware reliability or availability you need for that type of application. So that can be anything from if I'm doing something that's low-value data just for a data pump, it can be on just an industrial PC. If it's something where I need a certain level of reliability or availability, it can be run on a high availability VMware stack or Proxmox stack or whatever the case is. Yep. So I would say our goal has been to make it easy, make it so the folks and if you think about it from a mission perspective, the folks we're servicing are 2 different groups of people. One are the OT people who have to get it working and have to make sure it keeps working and provide the service they need for whatever that application is that's being delivered. And then there's the IT folks who have to make sure that it meets their standards, is appropriate for use in their environments, and is being updated and managed appropriately like any other IT asset would be. And we think we do a pretty good job of making both of those people happy and taking some of that burden off of their plate.
I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Because again, even in my conversations, I think that the OT side definitely still has a lot of challenges that I would say makes them, to some extent, and again, it depends on the group, right? If it's large or small or medium manufacturer, a bit more hesitant to go to cloud immediately, at least, right? Like as they see maybe something deployed on-prem, they see the value maybe of some of those components in the cloud, then they can be sold on the idea of moving more and more of that deployment there. But I think it makes perfect sense for you guys to have released this local/edge module. Let me ask you, I guess, go ahead.
I was just going to say that we actually foresee that we'll probably have customers who will never use our cloud version. I mean, technically the backups will be up there and certificates will be registered up there, and there'll be some stuff that happens from the cloud, but that they would essentially only ever use the Factory Stack Local Edition, because that would meet the needs of a lot of different users that have to run Ignition servers and databases and deal with certificates and stuff that if they can pay a service to, that might be useful for them.
Yeah, and it's like, again, I would say there's no one size fits all, or not a single answer to that question, right? Because it depends on the nature of the application. A lot of them can be run asynchronously in the cloud, and a SCADA type or a control systems type of an application needs to be closer to the components or the process. So I think it's a very tough challenge, right? But I think it also offers a good opportunity for you guys to be able to solve something like this in various angles that make sense for different applications, and then allow the end user ultimately to pick what they need, and then which applications or which containers solutions they might be using. So I think it's really good. Let me ask you, in the context of automate, right? So what is your, I want to maybe ask you a question on the, how would I say it, on the end user sentiment side, right? So there's for sure still this ITOT debate, right? There's no question about that. But are you seeing, I guess, more openness to these so-called Docker solutions, Kubernetes deployments? When you're talking to these teams, are they hiring more people with, let's say, IT knowledge and trying to upskill them on OT, or vice versa? Like, are you seeing us actually getting better this year than, let's say, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's become moving to containers versus VMs is not obviously, it's being driven by IT in a lot of ways, because it provides the ability to take better advantage of resources and automation. A bunch of really, I don't have to explain to you guys, but for the public out there, it's better when you do it at scale. It's hard when you do it for just like one workload or two workloads.
Yep.
What I think we're starting to see is people recognizing that there is benefit to that sort of an architecture, specifically enterprises, when you start talking about scale. And it's like, hey, instead of, I'm going to run this project in my plant and do this thing in this building that's going to, improve this process, when it's more like, hey, I want to implement, something across my network of facilities. I want to do predictive maintenance on all my wrapping machines. I have 2,000 of them across my network. That's a big logistical data challenge, and being able to deploy and operate and manage workloads that are being kind of operated at all of those different endpoints in a consistent way, with OT centric applications. That's a challenge that I think a lot of companies, are recognizing is real when they go to scale up or scale out, things that they've built in a pilot scenario, or things that they've built in a single place. So that's where, folks are. There's integrators now that are building Kubernetes sort of deployments and Dockerized deployments that customers are running themselves. Not all customers have the same level of sophistication and will, and that's where we come in. And so yeah, there's the market pickup of it, I think, has been strong, and I think, there's even now the open process group is really pushing on using orchestration to be able to run process controls, which I think is super neat. I mean, there was kind of proof of concepts in the last couple of years, and it's continuing to progress forward as well. So, we're very excited to see more and more vendors offer their software as containers, because that allows for us to be able to pick those up and make those a part of our catalog easier. I would say I'm still a little disappointed in some of the bigger names out there in terms of their speed to doing that, but that is not probably a surprise to anyone who lives in this world.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, what are your thoughts?
No, I would agree. So on my side, I am excited to hear how the greater community thinks of Factory Stack Local and Factory Stack Edge. I think it's a super fun conversation. If you guys aren't currently planning, or they're not on the top of the list, the inductive automation booth is booth 3452, which is honestly right in the middle of the Siemens booth and the Phoenix Contact booth. So we will probably be able to draw a line along where we will spend a lot of our time, at least on Monday and Wednesday. So I would definitely go ahead and check out James and Straw on the 4IR side. And then
Randy
honestly,
too.
oh, Randy's going to be there. Oh, very exciting. Very exciting. I'm happy to see Randy again. So go check out all three of those guys. Super fun, super good conversations to have. And then the entire inductive automation solution partner community. Always very good, fun conversations to have. Again, super happy that the booths are getting bigger. We're having more of this conversation around software. And honestly, I think it's pretty awesome that you and Brian have brought us both very similar to a similar point in kind of the journey of demos and everything that is being built and talked about at Automate. We still have Brian. We'll go bring him back on in just a minute. But before we do, James, I know that you've been to Automate several times. I know you've been to a bunch of trade shows. Anything that sticks out on the Automate side that is special for Automate or special for Detroit or otherwise that you want to call out for the listeners so they don't miss it?
So it is a homecoming for me because I am from Windsor. So I will say that I know on the personal side, a lot of people talk about how great Detroit pizza is. It's okay. Windsor makes the best pizza in the world. So a quick zip through the tunnel and go to Naples Pizza, and you can have the best pizza in the world. It's totally worth the drive. And I know a few Canadians are actually staying on that side of the border. So for those folks, don't forget to have the Canadian pizza. Just kind of another thing. I mean, I grew up in that area, so coming across to Detroit when I was a kid was a wildly different experience than what it is today. So it's so nice to see such a revitalized downtown and so much to do and feeling safe at night in certain areas of the city. So yeah, I encourage everyone not to go back to their hotel rooms and lock themselves in because Detroit downtown is a vibrant, wonderful place. I would say from a show perspective, I've only actually been once before, and I went to the last show in Detroit. So I don't know what it was like kind of pre-COVID. Okay. I thought of it as a robotics show, and I think like I think you guys talked about on with Brian is, my impression of it was wildly different and very good in terms of not just the exhibitors and the types of things they were bringing to the table, the number of software exhibitors, but there's integrators and solutions from machine builders and robotics company, and I just thought it was such a cool cross section of the related technologies in the space that we live in. That everything from people walking in those self-propelled moon shoes to cobots.
I remember those
stuff. I just thought it was a really, really exciting show, and there was just a lot to see and a lot to learn, and the vendors seemed to have such good representation there. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be a part of the inductive booth. Us and Opto 22 and Sepasoft and CirrusLink, we have a pedestal each inside of their booth. We've worked together on building some cohesive solutions that everybody has a finger in. So yeah, we're certainly excited to show off a little bit of what we think we can do and to also participate and see what some of the other folks bring to the show, because I think the collective move forward of technology and how fast things are going right now, especially with AI helping kind of out the back pushing us, it's exciting times.
Absolutely. And I would say, as we maybe bring Brian back on to the conversation, I like your comment about the moon shoes. I think I still have that memory of telling Dave as we were lugging those cameras around that we could be made a lot more efficient with such technology. So, bringing back both of you gentlemen together, I think the question for me for Automate, right? And Brian, you gave a couple of examples on the hardware side, mentioning some of the banner engineering modules on IO-Link. So I wanted to maybe IO-Link, and I wanted to expand that to the data side, right? Because I think there's certainly been a lot of, I want to say, well, I don't want to say changes necessarily, but I think there's been some advancements and some different architectures discussed. So I wanted to ask each one of you, maybe, what are you excited about? And I don't want to make it specific to Automate, because I know you guys obviously read a lot and, I'll understand those nuances, a lot of the trade show specifically, but put yourself in the shoes maybe of an attendee looking forward to the trade show. next week. What should they be looking at when it comes to maybe new, different data tools in the manufacturing space? Whether that's acquiring data, transforming data, presenting data, storing data, etc. James, do you want to take that one first?
So I think the next big thing from my perspective is centralized model management. And there's the concept of using knowledge graphs, and there's a few tools out there that have kind of moved that needle forward. I would say a lot, depending on who you talk to. But if I think to what my customers are looking for is, defining a model is cool. Replicating the model is fairly straightforward. Managing it over time is difficult. So because you have contributors from the source of the data, and as assets are changing and things are moving around, you have contributors from the center who are changing the way they want to organize and think about, and the different abstractions they have about the way they look at the data that they're collecting. And I think there's a few players out there that are kind of in this model definition, model management world. There's data ops tools out there that do some parts of that, but in my mind, I think that kind of layer of organization and management of abstractions is something that I think is kind of the next big thing for data-centric organizations to really try to get a handle on, and to make it easier for people. Again, everything's possible with enough time and money and fingers on keyboards, but making it easy, making it consistent, making it open, those are characteristics that I think will really help the market as a whole.
Any vendors you'd recommend checking out specifically, right? Because hopefully there's some of them attending Automate. We can
specifically for Vlad to go ask many questions to.
Well, on that side, because it is a problem, right? So
yes.
So there's so if you saw what Inductive Automation did, I didn't get to go to ProveIt this year, but what they did with some of the models from oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember the name. It'll come to me. But they certainly sorry?
Sesame?
Yes, that's what I was trying to think of.
Okay.
Sorry, John. But that was a really neat way of taking Sesame's standardized models and being able to apply them in fairly neat way to bring those models down into an ignition system. I mean, I think the folks at HighByte have some really neat technology. I think the folks at Flow have some really neat technology. There's lots of different stuff out there. We as kind of platform as a service providers, we're hoping that there's lots of great solutions that folks have the chance to choose from. And obviously we keep our eye on things, and I would say, to me, this is a space that's still being developed. There's I wouldn't say there's a de facto winner in this space at the moment.
Absolutely. I was going to ask if you think most groups are to that point of being ready for the centralized model management, or if we're still a bit early. No, Brian's shaking his head now. So we'll let Brian.
So I think the vast majority of manufacturers are completely disconnected, and the vast majority are nowhere near. And I think even as the industry itself is nowhere near that state yet. And it's for a simple fact that we're not connected to any of the machines. And because you're not connected to all of the machines, you don't know what the ways that we're interpreting them are. So with Sesame, what Sesame does that's really awesome is that they combine all the various different data models from the various different standard bodies that exist out there. So you have ISA 95 being one example of a standard that Sesame uses. And then there is machine, what was the ML one?
2MML?
Yeah. So that being an example of Sesame supporting that one. But I think what our really big issue is that we're not exactly connected to all of the various different machines that are out there, all the various different data points that exist, and we don't really know how to interpret every single one of those points. And it's very difficult to scale that out especially as you are wanting to connect more things to your network. So, I may have one, I may have a machine that's a standard CNC that everybody has, and that can connect all well and good. But what about a new custom bespoke one that I just got from an SI? How am I going to connect them in? How am I going to model their information and stuff? Now, there are some standard ones like PACML being one example of it, but what if it's a small sensor that's coming out, say from Banner? Like they have a sensor that's really smart. It has vision. It may have some AI. It can do some post-processing on the imagery for it. But the payloads that come out of it are always going to be custom bespoke and all this sort of stuff. And you're not going to have a standard to integrate it with that takes full advantage of that device, So I think eventually we're going to get better and better at modeling our realities. But our biggest issue right now is that we're just not connected to everything. And that is really what's holding us back from wanting to model things appropriately to understand really how we should be interpreting things. We do have standards that do help us with that, but reality is reality. If you're not defining your data infrastructure to match that reality, you simply won't get it. You'll have your model example of it, and it won't be right.
So I agree with you. I think that it's a crying shame that it's taken the AI use case to justify companies connecting their equipment together and actually having anything to look at. And a lot still haven't. And I think that level of digital maturity is something that when you have the anchor you have to drag behind you of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get the data first. Forget modeling it, forget abstracting it, forget using it for anything. Just getting it is going to take you all this time and all this money. It's a painful process, and so I think that has been a limiting factor in a lot of data driven systems. I do think that it's something that we're seeing a lot more value being driven from the data now than maybe 10 years ago. Because 10 years ago, we were doing this when I was at an integrator. We would connect the data, we would build some reports, we'd build a dashboard, cool. But it wasn't necessarily, expected to return, or was more difficult to justify the return because you had to kind of make the assumption there was enough value in the what you were going to learn from it. Now, when you're talking AI and all of these ML and deep learning models, it seems that the companies are willing to make a bigger investment with just as little proof that it's actually going to do something. So, take it for what it's worth, but yeah.
I think you both bring up good points. I think that there is a real opportunity to go find a path to help the majority, the middle, 60, 80% of manufacturers to jumpstart or significantly increase in their digital maturity, ideally without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. I haven't come up with anything that would go solve that $10 billion problem, but I 100% agree. And I think that both James and Brian bring up really good points, right? Like on some of our leading edge Fortune 50 organizations, maybe some smaller organizations, they are to the point of we need a centralized model repository so we can go manage this, because we need to go have it all in one place because we're doing all of these great things that hopefully return value. And to Brian's point, I think the majority, 60, 80 or more percent of the organizations are we should probably start collecting data. Or we want to do this one thing, and in order to do this one thing, be it AI or something else, we need to collect this data. So now we need to go through the hundreds of thousands of dollars of tech debt, just kind of debt in order to get there. So I think it's very interesting. And from my perspective, I would love to see more groups trying to go hit that middle majority of those organizations. But as we've had discussions on Manufacturing Hub time and time again, those are typically not the groups who are going to be on the internet or that marketing in lots of ways is going to get to, and it's going to be you live close or someone introduces you in, and then they're like, this is the way we get there. Brian?
Not only that, but also the machines that they buy, they're hand-me-down machines. They're not custom machines. So they buy what
Never.
makes that process work for them.
Yes, I like to call them Frankenstein lines. I had one client who bought like 2 or 3 different parts of a line, got it all mostly working, and then like chopped it in half, ripped it apart, and put a pasteurizing, and it was for like a beer co-packer, right? And I'm like, so how did you guys get this in here? And they're like, well, we cut the conveyors in half and like literally pulled one side over 12 feet in order to get it in. And I'm like, that's exactly what it looks like, guys. It looks like you cut your line in half and tried to throw something in the middle. And this is in part why the process doesn't work. And to Brian's point, that those guys have more than just data issues. Those guys have every single piece of operational and operations issues anyone could have.
Mm-hmm. And this is the vast majority of the industry too.
Mm-hmm.
I think a piece of advice for those companies out there like that, at least, and I don't know what you guys think of this, but I think they have to be really careful with point solutions. So they'll have a vendor, or their Google search will hit on, hey, we'll do this thing that will help you improve your ammonia usage, or this thing that'll help you with your optimization or air, whatever it is, and it's just for that. And it's isolated to that, and it's not integrated to anything else. And you go and you make that better, and you probably can justify that, but you could have spent that money on doing that same thing on an open platform that you could then add additional things to and use that to help pay for a baseline of capability. That is probably the single biggest thing for smaller manufacturers that I've seen that like it makes me cringe, because it's like, man, you spent all this money doing this thing, and it's great that it helped you with this one little problem.
Yep.
And you could have spent that money and helped with that problem and then 10 others.
Yeah, I think I would hope the 4 of us would agree on that point, right? I think it's just the reality. Again, it's either maybe closer vendors or vendors that are highly specialized on one specific topic, and maybe they do see the cost savings of this one potential solution that they will deploy this year versus thinking further ahead 3 to 5 years. But I 100% agree with you, James, on that side. Dave?
My biggest pain is when groups buy the point solution but don't own the data, and so they now have to go spend re-spend that same amount of money to go build a solution that they own the data so that they can use that as a baseline. I think there is validity in point solutions on some things, but you have to be able to go own your data. I've certainly worked with groups that a point solution is the beginning of their digital journey. And there's definitely validity in that. But I agree with James to the extent of the majority of point solutions that I've seen just lock them into never-ending contracts, and way too many of them hold their data and give them incomplete information and a report that may or may not allow them to go solve those issues. So I would not be looking at point solutions, and I try to convince clients to stay away from point solutions if that is the direction they're looking at going.
Allow me maybe to bring us into a more positive frame of thought and conversation, right? So I'll start with the premise that, in the early stages of AI, I've been to some extent dismissive of it when it comes to manufacturing, right? And so for me, part of my automate curiosity and interest is doing a little bit more research into what these different companies are coming out with, because I think I don't want to say every platform, but almost every software platform now is, advertising at least some sort of AI, and whether that's, Copilot on the design side, or maybe it's a digital twin that incorporates AI, or even, Dave and I spent a little bit of time with Sepasoft, where you can query some of the data that is entered by operators to get a picture of your operation, using different sentiments in AI. I'm curious, maybe James and Brian, what you guys are seeing on that front. Are you positive, negative about it? Like, what are your general thoughts? Anything maybe the potential end users should be checking out at Automate, and maybe even if they're not going, like, what is there to pay attention to?
I'm
Brian,
very positive about where AI is going, especially in manufacturing. I don't think it's going to be in the form that a lot of people think that it is, where you have a specific solution where AI is tied in. I think the way it's going to be is that you have a solution where AI can invoke it or utilize it a lot more effectively than other platforms currently are right now. So, and I say that because I don't think that you'll have specific like AI solutions for specific use cases, right? You'll have that. However, you won't really have like a more generalized AI for your specific use case. You know, if you want that use case to be AI enabled, you're looking at one of two things. Either you gotta have a solution that already has AI baked into it, or it's got to have a way for AI to be integrated with it. And I don't think that a lot of manufacturers are going to want to buy products that have AI baked into it. I think manufacturers are going to want AI, like that, them having full control over the AI itself, saying how they want that AI to operate their equipment, their plant, what have you, their operations in general. So treat AI like a normal person with they have ACL permissions. They're allowed to invoke specific commands and stuff in general, but you manage them and you maintain them and you make it programmatic so that when it comes to those cases, like it doesn't matter whether it's AI or an I, like, you know, an intelligent person behind it. It doesn't matter what it is, but you still have something that can interface with it. I think that's really what it's going to be like. And what that kind of looks like, I think, is that I think you're going to have your machines barking at your operators to solve the problems that machine is having. So I think a lot of the times now is like you have operators that are experts on their machines. However, that operator goes away for a couple of minutes. That machine turns right off. Why? Can it solve its own problems? Right now, it can't. But I think with AI, I think if you have AI somehow integrated either on that machine or in the system itself to be able to identify that machine being down, it can take the appropriate actions within its domain to solve that problem. Because for a machine, like think for a plant, if you gave a plant intelligence, what is it going to want to do? It's going to want to keep producing every single second. And I think that's the type of AI that we're eventually going to see, where you're going to have the machines be smart, but they're going to specifically be designed to always be producing and doing whatever they can to keep producing.
It sounds like Skynet. I feel like that's exactly how Skynet came about. But look,
are you terrified? I thought you wanted a happy note.
Oh, yeah. Could be interesting.
It is.
James?
It is Skynet. Well, it feels a little bit that way, like you said. So I think there's a big distinction to be made between the flavors of AI that not everyone, I think, kind of appreciates, and that can lead to a bit of confusion when you talk about, well, how do I use AI to make something better? And you know, ML is, you know, kind of the simplest form of AI in terms of, you know, you train a model, and rather than using statistics, you use ML to do predictive, you know, failure or optimization of parameters or stuff that, you know, you would either have operational intelligence to do, or you would use some sort of a trained model to identify if there was, you know, some issue with a system or predict when there was going to be an issue. Those type of ML models, I think, are wildly underutilized in manufacturing today. There's a ton out there. Some are built into some products, like cameras and different things. Others are, you know, being deployed and trained in the cloud and deployed on, you know, local GPUs, depending on how complex they are. I think though that sort of is going to continue, and that pace is probably going to just kind of go like this. I think where you're going to see the big kind of duck hook up is around agentic AI, where you have agents that are advising and interacting with and helping to optimize the work that the people do and replace the work that some people do. So things like scheduling. I mean, how many plants use a big spreadsheet to schedule their work? You don't need that anymore if you have you have something that can optimize your schedules. Things like inventory management, things. So outside of like equipment itself operating and just in terms of how you manage a facility, how you manage a flow, one of the really cool ones that I've seen is where there's a scientist on board that knows everything there is. He helped train a model that's supposed to be his eventual replacement, and that model is monitoring process parameters and can predict when certain activities or actions should be done from a preventative maintenance or a replacement perspective. Like those are things that are extremely useful because they end up replacing people as a part of it, which opens up a whole bunch of other questions around what happens when we don't have any jobs to do anymore. But I think that kind of AI, that sort of agentic tie-in to the way we do work, and gone are the days where you open up the manual or even go to the website to look for something. You ask your chatbot for help. I need to write some code, or can you help me debug this problem? Or all of that stuff is going to make the average capability of an employee go way through the roof. But it's also going to mean you're going to need less people to do the stuff we do today. And a lot of I hate to say it, but anybody who does busy work needs to learn a trade, because busy work is going to go away at some point in our future. And if you as a manufacturer aren't looking into how that works with the way that you do business, competitors are. And it's going to be a I don't want to sound doom and gloomy because you said not to. But it's going to be interesting.
I think in the U.S. specifically, I think the manufacturing industry, it has to boom. Even to, not to get onto the political, we'll just be more on the broad side of stuff. Just because on the tariff side of stuff, if we want to meet with our current demand of products, we have to double our manufacturing capacity. That in and of itself, I don't think that a lot of the people that this new technology, that this will replace a lot of those specific jobs, but I don't think those people will be out of work anytime soon. Any experience in manufacturing, especially nowadays, is going to be a tremendous asset for an individual. And it is a day in, day out thing. Well, jobs change all the time. And if we can...
I'm a chimney sweep. What are you talking about?
If we can keep people trained on these higher skills, on the skills that we actually need, then people won't have to worry so much on jobs. It's when we train people on things that we don't need that these people become redundant and are not needed. And what we really need to keep focusing on is that as this technology evolves, we need to constantly be training people on it. Because no matter what, it will change. Your jobs will change over time. How many job titles have you gone through in the last 5 years compared to the 10 years before that? How many job titles have changed over time? For me, and I know a lot of my friends, titles have been changed almost monthly for them. And it's because they're just doing so many of the different things that nobody thought about that they were ever going to do. And now it's a skills issue that we're dealing with, where nobody in manufacturing knows how to produce things. Nobody in manufacturing knows how to make machinery. Nobody in manufacturing knows how to do anything with technology, just about. And so there's just such a big opportunity. There's a big gap right now. But I think with the training, the information that's available, if we can keep educating, the problems in the job market will always go away because we're educated. But if we stop educating, like what we've been doing in manufacturing in the past 10, 15 years, 20 years, it's going to be in the same pace. And so that's why. So put it on a positive note.
I don't know that that's positive.
Yeah, no, I feel like Vlad just set up a question that started with Skynet and maybe slightly devolved from there. So congratulations, Vlad, on I'm going to go bring the conversation to a positive thing. That is the second scariest thing Vlad will say on the show now. The first is I have an easy question for you. Let me ask you an easy question. Absolutely, absolutely. Having said that, I think it'll be interesting. There are two very divergent paths that I think Brian laid out and James laid out. I think the outcomes will be similar, but I think there is a lot of middle ground that most groups have to cover. As I said on the show last week or a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about the AI work that I'm doing, most groups who say that we're interested in AI have not even prepared to do the groundwork, right? For me, the groups who say we're interested in AI and have started the groundwork, those are more impressive. But they are certainly a fewer number of those groups who say, yes, I need to do this, and also say, I am slightly prepared. Having said that, we are about up on time. We will definitely have to have this conversation and continue the conversation. Maybe after Automate, we will say Industry 5.0 is AI the start of the revolution or Skynet? We will go have a much longer roundtable discussion on that topic, maybe depending upon what we're seeing on the show. Again, next week, Automate. If you guys want to see James is going to go be with the 4IR Solutions Group at the Inductive Automation booth, which is booth 3452. If you want to see Brian, go check Brian out at the Phoenix Contact booth, which is booth 5232. And if you want to check out Vlad and I, we've got Manufacturing Hub on Wednesday going on all day at the Siemens booth, which is booth 3232. Beyond that, I will be in Orange all week. So go find the guy with the big beard walking around in Orange all week. Having said that, Vlad, any last thoughts or comments before we wish everyone a good rest of their Wednesday?
Nothing specific. Looking forward to Automate next week, and thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
No problem.